Is it working? Okay. I'm sorry. So it's working now. So again, this was special exception 2021-02 submitted by SunPro Solar on behalf of George and Rosetta Wright. The request is for the approval of a 6 kilowatt DC small solar system in pursuant to those code sections. The property for which the special exception is being requested is zoned low-density rural and is situated at 528 Syringa Road, Topping, Virginia. It's further identified as tax parcel 37-1-1 in the Saluda district. Few site statistics. It's 5-acre parcel. It is zoned low-density rural. All the surrounding parcels are zoned low-density rural as well. It's mostly an agricultural area. This shows the parcel highlighted off the tax map. And there's a overview showing the parcel. Mr. Wright's farm is, his parcel is partially used for agricultural purposes. I believe William Wright farms some of it. So. And if you look on this overview from Google Earth, you can see the approximate location of where the panels are going to be located. That property line is, I guess, to the right or to the east side of those trees. So the small facility is going to be shielded well from the road view and also from the western property. You can see there's quite a bit of obstructions in the way. So the only screening necessary is on the eastern side and the rear of it. There again, that shows the approximate location of the parcels. The only, most of the time that field is in crops, either beans or corn for the most part. This is looking at it from the street view. You can see a couple pictures. You can see those trees screen everything pretty well from the street view. And this is just a picture from the backyard, shows several photographs. And that would be the only adjoining property. What you see there is what adjoins the panels. Again, he's got his parcel nicely landscaped and vegetated to screen most of the panels. This narrative shows, this overview shows the basic location of where this will be located. A little bit zoomed in view there. And details on the panels. So this was provided at a later time. I'll give a little background on this. This was amended application, shows the basic location of where the screening, he's going to use a wood fencing to screen the panels. A little bit better detail as I move through these. And that's the type of fence he's going to use to screen it. It's prefab. I'm sure the property is in nice shape, so I'm sure the fence will be constructed well. Of course, we know the request is for approval of a special exception to allow construction of a small solar facility, 6 kilowatts. There's 4 basic components for approval aside from the Article 20-5B, I believe it is. There are standard special exception criteria, but and most of these are extruded out. We see that no facility should produce noise, glare, smoke, or fumes that would constitute a nuisance to the public. All solar panels should use non-concentrating anti-reflective coatings. Exterior surfaces of the collectors and related equipment shall have a non-reflective finish, and solar panels shall be designed and installed to limit glare to a degree that no afterimage would occur towards vehicular traffic and any adjacent properties. Panels shall be repaired or replaced when either non-functional or in invisible disrepair. Any equipment or situations on the parcel, on the project site that are determined to be unsafe must be corrected within 30 days of citation of the unsafe condition. Mr. Wright has supplied a narrative that meets these, indicating that these conditions will be met. So it complies with that component. No aspect of a solar energy facility shall exceed 15 feet in height as measured from grade at the base. You can see that this limitation may be increased by the board supervisors, provided the applicant can demonstrate that use cannot be viewed over top of screening vegetation from a higher vantage point. Such height restrictions shall not apply to electrical distribution or transmission lines. The panels are less than 10 feet. I would imagine you have probably an 8-foot fence. The adjoining property is basically level, so these things may protrude slightly over the top, but for the most part, they're going to be totally screened from from the adjoining properties. Opaque screening shall be installed directly adjacent to any small facility between the facility and adjoining property line. The screening may be existing vegetation, which he's utilizing in some places. If the adequate natural screening is not present or is insufficient, vegetation shall be planted that achieves the purpose listed above. Privacy fencing may be utilized in lieu of vegetation, which Mr. Wright is proposing. A site plan was provided with the application. The plan that was forwarded to the Planning Commission did not indicate the required screening. The Planning Commission therefore denied the application based on this deficiency. The application has since been updated to include the required screening. We'll get a little background on that. Matt can probably tell you this. Very seldom does our Planning Commission deny an application. We usually work with applicants. Mr. Wright was in a situation where we had basically at the mercy of his contractor. So that we sent comments numerous times to his contractor to correct the deficiencies prior to the Planning Commission meeting. And they just, for some reason, they had internal system breakdowns. They couldn't figure this out. So I did this mainly for two reasons. I needed to keep moving this application along. And the second, to send a message to Mr. Wright's contractor that they need to comply with our ordinance prior to me sending it to this board, because we wouldn't want to send it to this board incomplete. So since then, Mr. Wright has come forward and kind of taken over the application to his own credit and has indicated he's going to comply with the special exception criteria that requires the screening. So he's, in this case, it's staff's opinion that he's met that requirement. Once the facility has, and this is the last component, once the facility has ceased to operate for a period of 6 months, all panel structures and any other associated equipment must be removed from the property and disposed of in a legal manner. The application it does have a decommissioning plan component to it. So that particular portion complies as well. So what we see here is a definition of the facility. It's a small system. It's a private solar energy conversion system. We can see that you could go up to 25 kilowatts with that type of facility, and he's at 6. So he's within that threshold of being in this definition and the special exception. The Planning Commission, as I just stated, recommended unanimously to deny the application, basically for one purpose and one reason only, and that was the deficiency for Section 15C-4, the screening 4C, the requirement for screening was not satisfied. So with that, the applicant has addressed the screening deficiency noted by staff and the Planning Commission. Therefore, staff recommends approval of special exception 2021-02. And if the board has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to the chair for.
Yeah, I have a couple.
Yes, sir.
So in looking at the application where, was this added from the original application to staff recommends approval, or did this, I was a little confused, did the staff recommend it and then the Planning Commission?
When it went to the Planning Commission?
Yes.
Mr. Harris, yes, sir. It was staff recommended that the application be denied.
Right.
Staff's recommendation to the Planning Commission was that it to be denied.
Correct.
And it was important that they articulated the reason for denial.
Okay.
Because the rest of the application was adequate. It was just that one component that the applicant at the time was not adhering to or addressing. So, and there's a regulatory requirement for staff to move these along at a certain pace. We can't just let it sit there for 2 years. And
Okay,
so we were then, we have time, but we wanted to move this along and also let the applicant and his contractor know what that deficiency was and why it was denied, so they could address it.
okay. So should this page be updated that the planning commission has now, or the applicant has met those requirements? And I assume now the planning commission is in favor of granting the special exemption.
Well, the planning commission is out of the picture now. They
Okay.
make their recommendation,
Okay.
and it goes to the board.
Okay,
So the planning commission's recommendation was that it was deficient for that one component.
okay. And now
that-
it's
that was-
not.
That was their reason for denial. They step aside
Okay,
since that component has been addressed and it's corrected, now, because the planning commission is not an approval, it's strictly a recommendation.
correct.
So at that point, once they send it on, they're out of the picture. Unless it was tabled at that point, they could have tabled it, sent it back to the planning commission. The planning commission could have re-reviewed it and issued a recommendation based on the new information. But at that time, we were not getting any feedback from Mr. Wright's contractor, so we moved it on just to basically keep it in the pipeline, keep
Mis-
it going.
Mr. Chairman, and Don, if I may, I noticed the application originally came in August 2021.
That's correct,
So it's almost a year of dealing with a contractor. You couldn't get anywhere with them.
correct.
So I'm kind of reading between the lines of what Dave's saying here. It took the planning commission recommending denial to get the contractor to do what's needed. And it sounds like even then, the property owner had to step up and actually do what's needed to get approval for the contractor. Is this contractor aware of our process now and the requirements?
I don't believe so.
Next time you get an application from them, sit them down.
It's,
Because they just wasted this man's year.
yes. It seems to be common amongst that industry. I liken it to the aluminum siding
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah.
I hate it, they need some internal work. And to bend them slightly, they're obviously, what they submitted as far as components of the electrical components were all engineered, they were done well. Obviously, they're not used to the land use component of this. That's where the disconnect is. We probably are, yeah. It's just something our community's decided on, our board has decided that they want to review these. These may be by right in some areas under certain conditions, and it may be a lot easier for these contractors to go forward
I would-
and get a permit. So that's what they kept asking for their permit, and they just could not understand that it was more to it,
Yeah.
that the special exception is a special exception
And with a public hearing.
with a public hearing granted only by our Board of Supervisors. Only this governing body can grant a special exception. And they had a hard time understanding that.
Well, and I guess my question was, I don't want it to be perceived that, but from what you just said, the planning commission now has no problem with the application. Is that correct?
They would probably not, they did not re-review it after the denial.
Okay.
Once they denied it, they took action.
Okay.
They're out of the picture.
So my point being is, I don't want it construed that the Board of Supervisors approved a special provision, exception, if they weren't on board with it. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying, yes, yes. But the board can make their own decisions aside, the planning
understand.
commission is just a recommendation.
I understand.
Plus, the one deficiency that the planning commission, in their recommendation, noted the deficiency. This was the reason we denied it. For no other reason did we deny it.
Okay.
So that deficiency's been remedied. So if this went back to the planning commission, there would be no reason for the planning commission to deny it, because it meets the basic components of the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
So the planning commission should act correctly, and they base their decisions based on the zoning ordinance. The Board of Supervisors, with a special exception, gets to decide a few more intangibles. They look at the community as a whole. They have a little bit more, I guess, scope in their review than the planning commission. The planning commission is more focused on how does this work within the zoning ordinance, where the board can look at it as other components coming into it.
Right. Okay. But you see where I'm coming from.
Oh, yeah.
It just looks a lot neater and a lot,
Yeah,
when everybody's on the same page.
I know, and
And it
Matt,
sounds like everybody's on the same page. But from the documentation that I'm looking at, it's like, well, okay.
yeah. And Matt can tell you, we get a lot of special exceptions, and a lot of them are deficient in a lot of ways. And we work with applicants through that process to try to remedy them. You know, the most of them are, if we were that much of a stickler on every one, we'd probably never get one through and just kick it, you know, we'd end up kicking them back all the time. So,
And I can elaborate a little bit
Yeah.
on that, not to take the board's time, but one of the last things I did when I was planning director here, and it was based on what we learned through our certified planning commission members course, certified BZA course, and some of the certifications you get through tech, is if you have special exceptions, that you have established criteria to meet, and it's basically just, have they met their criteria? Yes, stamp approve. Have they met the criteria? Yes, stamp approve. What they recommend you do is not continue and have them as special exceptions, downgrade them to a permitted use with those criteria, make it an administrative decision. Because what, in a sense, you do is you bog board time down, reviewing the same old special exception time and time again with the same requirements. You got a staff that can tell if it meets requirements or not. If it does, it gets approved. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Simple. So the training will tell you, don't bog board time and planning commission time deciding matters of fact, because if you have never approved one or never disproved one, denied one, then you should just make it a permit. And that's probably some of the disconnect here. We have a higher standard, and we had this discussion years ago when we amended the ordinance to allow the board more input in these solar farms because there was considerable public backlash at the time. We will probably get to the point where you see a number of these, and we're approving all of them because they've met the requirements and the staff has recommended approval. Well, you may need to consider downgrading it.
Okay.
And now, that's broader planning
it. I get it.
philosophy, but you don't want to overburden applicants with unnecessary regulation on stuff you're automatically going to approve if it just meets simple criteria.
Cool. I got two more questions. One, is the production of this electricity, is that being used solely privately?
I would have to have Mr. Wright explain that. I believe some of this is, all of these facilities, whether it's a home mounted, I believe some of it's sold back, the overproduction, the overproduction, I believe, is sold back to Virginia Dominion Energy.
Okay.
So that's where it brings the cost down for the homeowner, because the contractor, the
right.
installer is kind of skimming, so I don't know how else to put it. He's
Right.
skimming some of it off and
Right.
selling it back. And that's true I believe I've heard that for years, whether, if you install your own generating, they have to buy back what you don't use, so. Yeah, I mean, that's been standard knowledge since I was young, so.
And my last question is, if additional panels were to want to be added to this, would the applicant have to go through the same process on requesting a special exemption or for additional to be added?
As the ordinance is written, right now, it would be my determination that it would, if he's increasing the capacity. He's asked for 6 kilowatts. If he's going to start
Correct.
producing 8 or 10 or 30
Right.
or 25 or something under the threshold, that's not what was advertised, that's not what was indicated, that's not what this board considered.
Correct.
So you would have to go back and amend it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
And we'd have to go back through the public process and everything else. So,
cool. Thank you.
Yes. All right. Any other?
Any other questions for Dave? Would the applicant like to address the board?
It's taking you a year to get here. Enjoy your moment.
It has that. Thank you. I originally signed this contract to install this solar system, and had I elected to have it put on my roof, we wouldn't be here discussing this. But because I would not let them do that, I wanted a ground mount system. This is what we had to do. Now, originally, I was told all the permitting would be taken care of and I wouldn't have to be involved. As Mr. Walker says, it's been a year and we haven't got a permit. Now, I've been copied on all the emails that Mr. Kress has had with them, and I have never disagreed with anything I read that he told them. But I can tell you, I agreed to put the fence in that's needed, and I'll stand behind that. That I will do what's needed to get the process done one way or the other. Your question about the extra power, if it does make extra power, yes, it's sold back to Dominion or whoever.
Right.
The system is so small, there may be days that it will make power,
Sure.
it goes back, but overall, over the year, no, I'm going to consume more power than it's actually making.
Right. Good. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion before we make a motion?
No, first you're going to open it for public comment.
Oh.
Sorry, you have to have your public hearing first.
I'll open the meeting for public comment. I will close public comment period.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would make a motion to accept the applicant. Make a motion that the special exception 2021-02 be accepted.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Williams, second by Mr. Harris. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Williams,
Aye.
and Mr. Kimbrough.
Aye. Motion's approved. Congratulations. There being no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Yeah, we gotta get with Wayne to find out what time. We'll advertise it.
Do we,
Oh, tell y'all.
do we have to roll call to adjourn?
Do they have to roll call to adjourn? Do you have a motion then? You have to have a motion first? Roll
We
call?
did. Mr. Williams and seconded by
Okay.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Williams, Mr. Harris,
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.